Hello, YouTube. On today's episode of Know Your Rights, we will be covering a news story about three police officers who have been charged in connection with the fatal shooting of a child outside of a football game. If that sounds interesting to you, please subscribe to our channel. Also, if you would like to see videos covering all things retro video gaming, please check out my second YouTube channel, Retro Gaming Central. Now, without further ado, let's jump right into today's video. An 8-year-old girl was killed outside a high school football game in August, and three Pennsylvania police officers have been charged with manslaughter as a result of the incident, which occurred after two teens opened fire on them. Officer Devin Smith, Sean Dolan, and Brian Devaney of the Sharon Hill Police Department in the Philadelphia suburb of Sharon Hill were each charged with a total of 12 counts, including voluntary and involuntary manslaughter, as well as reckless endangerment, according to Jack Stolzheimer, the district attorney for Delaware County. According to the prosecutor, we have now determined beyond a reasonable doubt that it was in fact gunfire fired by our officers that struck and killed Fanta Bility and critically injured three others. Mr. Stolzheimer's office, in response to the recommendations of a grand jury which was convened on November 18, 2021, to evaluate whether or not to file charges against the officers. Mr. Stolzheimer has sought murder charges against the two adolescents in November in connection with the initial gunshot outside the stadium, but the accusations were later withdrawn following the conclusions of the grand jury inquiry, according to his office on Tuesday. The prosecutor's office provided a statement from Bruce L. Castor, Jr., a lawyer who represents the Bility family, in conjunction with the announcement of the charges against the police officers. They made the correct decision, stated the attorney. Mr. Castor stated in an interview that the pursuit of convictions against the police officers will be difficult, but it is a winnable case. In a joint statement, the three attorneys representing the police officers said that armed and violent criminals turned a high school football game into a crime scene. They described their clients as heroic police officers who responded to a life-threatening situation that was caused by armed and violent criminals. They went to the sounds of gunfire and endangered their own lives to protect the neighborhood. In addition, Officer Smith, 34, Mr. Dolan, 25, and Mr. Devaney, 41, according to their attorneys, are innocent and remain saddened as a result of this terrible atrocity. The head of the Fraternal Order of Police in Delaware County, Joseph Fitzgerald, described it as a sad day for our police. These officers are facing criminal charges for attempting to do their duty and keeping the community safe, Mr. Fitzgerald stated. The allegations brought against the police officers on Tuesday came after months of investigation and deliberation over whether or not to press criminal charges against them at all. Despite an increase in the number of police officers being charged with murder and manslaughter for on-duty shootings in recent years, the overall number of officers who were charged is extremely low, according to Philip M. Stenson, a professor of criminal justice at Bowling Green State University, who keeps track of police officer criminal prosecutions. According to records maintained by Mr. Stenson that dates back to 2005, the charges filed on Tuesday raised the total number of police officers charged with murder or manslaughter as consequences of an on-duty shooting to 155. Considering that there have been more than 5,000 fatal police shootings since 2015, according to a database maintained by the Washington Post, he believes that the 155 figure is low. According to Mr. Stenson's database, a record number of 21 on-duty police officers were charged with either murder or manslaughter last year, which is a new high. This is in contrast to over 1,100 people who were killed in police interactions, according to the Mapping Police Violence database, which shows that more than 1,100 people were killed in police encounters in 2010. During an interview, Mr. Stenson stated, "It appears that extremely limited percentage of instances that result in officers being charged needs further investigation. The stats are very frightening when you take a closer look at them," he stated. "The only way to see that there is a systematic problem is to gather all the data and examine it together. I can only presume that every situation where an officer is not charged, there was a judgment by investigators or the prosecutor that the officers were justified in their use of deadly force, Mr. Stenton said, noting that most on-duty officers engaged in fatal shootings are not prosecuted. For the simple reason that, in the absence of that, we would expect criminal charges, he went on to say. The allegations brought against the defendants on Tuesday came from a shooting that occurred on August 21st, 2021. According to the prosecutors, the shooting erupted outside the football field at Academy Park High School in Sharon Hill during the season opener against Pennsbury Hill High School, while police were on the scene monitoring the crowd, according to the report. A few minutes still left on the clock, but the game was effectively over with a 42-0 victory for the home side. When the burst of gunfire sounded out, people were already making their way to the exits. On the field, players fell to the ground in search of protection. Prosecutors do say that 2 of the shots were fired in the direction of the responding officers. According to the prosecutors, the officers responded by opening fire in the direction of the stadium. According to the prosecutors, the officers also opened fire on a car that they assumed was the source of the original gunfire, but it really was not. The police opened fire with 25 bullets. According to the prosecutors, when the gunfire stopped, Fanta was dead and at least 3 other persons were injured. On September 2nd, prosecutors stated that there was substantial likelihood that Fanta and the other victims had been struck by bullets fired by the officers rather than by the teens themselves. Criminal charges were filed against the 2 adolescents on November 10th, including murder charges, which were later dropped, but no charges were made against the police officers who were there at the time. That sparked indignation in the neighborhood and enraged members of the Fanta family, who were concerned that the cops would ultimately get away with it and avoid accountability. A teenager, Hanson Strand, 18 of Collindale, has entered a guilty plea to illegal possession of a firearm and aggravated assault. The other teen, Angelo Ford, 16, also known as AJ, remains charged with attempted murder. The 2 teens were arrested in September of 2021. So let me know what you think, YouTube, in the comments below. Should these officers face accountability for their actions, or should they be allowed to continue to patrol our neighborhoods and keep us safe? If you like this video, please take a moment and subscribe to our channel. Until the next episode of Know Your Rights, stay safe out there.